Hello, hello, hello. It's Monday again. Monday fun day. All right. It's Monday. Let's I'm gonna give you guys some time to get in here. But I wanted to before we start, I wanted to say some things. And since you guys aren't here, well, those is record that watch the recording, you're here. But until we get it's an interactive show. So until more people get in, we're gonna say this. This is the start of something that's happening, these interactive shows. So anyway, I noticed that some people were watching it like we're not we're not perfect at this just yet. It takes time to get there. So welcome to our humble beginnings, our humble beginnings. Um, these YouTube videos and social media videos, it's new to everybody that's trying to convert over from the usual pre-pandemic methods of doing things. So, and it just so happens to be at a time where people are asking, where you gonna come from behind the background? Where you gonna come out of the background and get in the front of these things? So anyway, another thing, I do watch my videos and I try to take notes so that I can fill any gaps that were there. Some people watch and everyone has different levels of understanding. So I try to be extremely clear. And it's not just their levels of understanding, but English. It may not be everyone's first language. So it's easier for communication to be effective if I speak extremely plain. It is not because I do not possess the ability to use $20 million words and stuff like that. Who's watching for that? If you're watching for that, that's the part you're going to have to pay for. So I do make mention of that in my shows that there's some things that you will have to pay for. But for free, you can get, this basic type stuff. So I want it to be well understood. Why do I say some stuff you have to pay for? Because the level of professionalism that you may be looking for that's synonymous with my name, you'd have to actually pay for those things. But since how you're not paying for it, we try to be a little loose, a little carefree, a little, here and there so that it can reach more of an audience than just the elites or the people who can afford to pay or people who may want to pay for those $1 million words. This is for the people. These free videos are for the people. I'm not producing these videos for, the elite to judge me and say, oh, maybe she doesn't know what she no, this is not for you. This is for the people. That's why it's interactive. And if you come on my show and you one of the elite and you want to challenge me with some vocabulary words, come on, bring it. I got you. Anyway, I had to say that because I noticed some things going on and people got to understand that I'm very mindful of what's happening. But this isn't for you. This is for the people because we should be able to provide things for free. But until it's the law, this is the way I have to go about it. And I don't mind. But anyway, um, speaking of reviewing my videos and seeing gaps, there was some clarity in one of the videos I saw. I think I need to revisit that comment that I made. I stated I didn't need Eddie, I wanted him. That's my husband. So it was not to say that I don't need him. What I mean to say is I don't need to burden him, hinder him by overly relying on him or overly stressing him to do things or get something or otherwise, be stressed out for something that I'm doing on my part, in our relationship towards him. For my comfort or whatever it is I want him to do or need. I don't need him to do anything for me. I may ask him or search for, something that I would like to need him for, but I don't. People sometimes misunderstand the things that you say. That's why I love it when somebody brings something to my attention so I can, provide clarity as to what I mean. In my very first episode, I said, if there's something I say that you don't understand what it is that I said, or you took a different understanding, let me know. I'm happy to clear that up. But for every day, I choose him. So I find ways to get him to see value in him that I desire. So when you looking for somebody, Don't look for people that you need, because once you find out that you can do that, you can feel that need for yourself, that they're, they lost they reason for being there, and you're gonna likely start looking for somebody else once you realize you have a different need and they can't meet it. So I didn't say yes to Eddie out of all the other options because I needed him or he had something that I needed. I said it because I wanted to. So that's what it means by, that's what I meant by, when I said I don't need him, I want him. Um, and it's like every day you make the decision of this person that you decided you wanted to be with. And what's a good decision? Some people ask when they inquiring about relationships, who should I pick? Especially people who are in these love triangles and these quadruples and things like that. Yeah, I know a lot. I deal with different things, but I don't judge. It's very interesting, I think, and a lot of times people want to know my opinion, my perspective on different things, and it has a lot to do with love, but it more than anything has everything to do with, is this somebody that you want for the long term in your life? Because every day you have to keep choosing that person. So that's what I mean in relationship advice when I talk about relationships. And sometimes, in these new forums, we don't get a chance to say that. We just keep going off of what we've already did, and people don't know you, so they don't know what you mean by the things that you say. So I had to go back and say that. For me, that's what I find. I find help meet is like a mate that's helpful, help mate. I use words, mnemonics to help, you know, simplify things so that I can convey them at a more basic level so that everyone is on one accord when we are talking about a particular word. That's why in my first video I said, if there's something, a word, anything that I use and you don't understand what I mean by it, then let me know, hit me in them comments, and I would definitely get into it. Uh, so what? Yes, the message is still valid and it's important. Hey, Sean Anthony. Hey, Teddy. There's nothing. What? There's nothing wrong. Yes, there's nothing wrong with you needing someone. Don't get that confused with what I said about needing or wanting someone. Okay, that's number one. I said me, not you. So that's what we're gonna do with that. Okay, so let's talk about let's talk about now that we got that clear. I just want to make it sure that when we get in here, we in here. So I don't have, because sometimes people come late and they say, "What are we talking about? What are we talking about?" So I don't want you to say, "What are we talking about?" All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit, just a little bit, so we can get a little clarity on something else. What was it? It was. Let's see. Oh wow. That's not helpful. Okay. So we're gonna go back to it. So I don't know. I did a boo boo there. Hey Teddy, how you doing? I appreciate everybody that's coming, everybody that's up in here. I, okay, so that was something I wanted to talk about, and I didn't want, I didn't want to wait. I wanted to wait till people got in here, but I didn't want to wait too long. I wanted to talk just a little bit about PTSD, just a little bit, not like a whole lot. We don't want to dwell on it, but I spoke about it before, and I wanted to get a little clarity there. I find nothing wrong with people. The ability to speak on all levels is important. Yes, and that's why a lot of times I'll refer to the Rudyard Kipling poem "If," because people need to understand that, yeah, while you have the ability, is that something that you should do, because you're missing a wider audience and it turns a lot of people off. So you try to be more, well, less controversial and more friendly. And that's what I try to do. Try to be a little bit more friendly. But I want to talk a little bit about PTSD, because a lot of people, they say things like, people don't believe PTSD exists. Some people say, how are you just coming up with new mental illnesses, right? And that's not the case. Um, PTSD, it's not just now coming out, but it's like narcissism. Narcissism didn't just come out of the blue. It's just that that's what they've been talking about since they kind of, you know, realized some narcissistic tendencies in the last president. And then it just became, a trend. It's a culture where everybody's out here just hard trending with just everything. And I find that interesting because just about everything is a phenomenon these days for people to research, and it's exciting. If you ask me, I'm excited about it. But PTSD is so convenient, people say, and people use in all. What is it? Somebody was like, "Oh, PTSD is so convenient, and people use it at will to avoid things they don't want to do or to deal with, because it's too random or sudden, or no one knows when it's going to happen, or what's going to trigger that person." I understand. I hear you all's complaints. But just because you don't know a lot about something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means you don't know a lot about whatever that is. So it's like, you may not have, to be the one who said, you may not be the one who said that, but some people who suffer from, these illnesses, uh, that aren't popularly spoken of, or most people don't know about it, or it's a rare illness, and a lot of times people don't want to talk about their ailments, and one of the limitations, and it makes it difficult for open discussion, for people to talk about their ailments. Who's going out here doing that? As long as we live, we learn, right? So we don't want to keep judging people for ailments that they have, or little signs that show that they have this ailment. Think about it like this. Finish this saying: what goes on in the house, what stays in the house. So there's a lot of times people have an ailment or something's wrong with them. Like back in the day, you'll have that one cousin, that one auntie, that one uncle, that granddad or grandma, or somebody that everybody knows. Don't say that name. Keep that like Voldemort. Keep that out your mouth. I'm not saying that everybody. I'm saying we all know of somebody that has, that sort of situation going on. And it's okay. A lot of people tend to make light of, the things that can't change. That's a little controversial. Um, and that's where you see a lot of comedians, make fun and everything. So yeah, it's all right. It's acceptable because it's them talking about their situation, but it's like, how could doctors explore these illnesses when people rarely want to be seen by a doctor? And even rather, than that, they don't want to be diagnosed or accept the diagnosis, and they especially don't want to treat the diagnosis. So it's hard for people to start talking about these ailments as a regular conversation, when people would really rather to push that in the closet, keep it under the rug, or act like it doesn't exist at all, because they don't want to be judged, or they don't want to be unloved by the people that love them, but they won't love them if they find out that they have a problem. So it's hard for people to know about these ailments. So I would just, that's what I'm talking about as far as acceptance. A lot of times it's because they're afraid of the prognosis, meaning they're afraid the likely course of the ailment or illness is going to be fatal, or all doom and gloom, and they'd rather not know, which is, common, especially among particular generations of people. They would rather not know, and they definitely would rather not tell you because, oh, they may not want to worry you. They may not want you to ask questions because they don't want to know anything else about the ailment. And that's okay. That's common, you know. But now in these modern times when everybody know everybody business, it's hard not to talk about things that were once, you know, rarely spoken of, but they exist. Some people are more like, ostriches, and they want to put their head in the sand, like the storm won't hit if they don't see it coming. So that's common. That's where you get that saying from, ostriches, because they do that. But a lot of people, they don't see the problem. As long as they don't see it coming, they're like, well, it's whatever. It's gonna happen if it happens. If it, and I don't have to see it coming. But whatever way people deal with their situation, that's for them, and you have to love them through it and love them despite whatever they choose. So it's highly um, relatable idea that to ignore problems and hope it goes away or pray it away. Some people who believe in praying, they'll pray and they may say they refuse to accept the diagnosis, but what you should do is reject the fatal prognosis. It's a difference. The diagnosis means I'm just classifying what's going on and going wrong with you that you may want to address. A prognosis is telling you how severe the situation is. So, see, faith will help you endure because oftentimes the intent is for you to go through and make it through. That's what the intent of knowledge and knowing and having faith in going through a thing. It is not intended for you to reject all things all the time because there's a testimony in that. You don't want to keep rejecting. Oh, I didn't have that. I didn't have AIDS. Well, what happened was, no, you had it and you still have it, but God, because you decided you thought you were dying and you decided to pray, and you in that prayer, God led you and said, well, look, because you asked, I will do this. So now you're able to live with AIDS. Yes, it's a lot of drugs and stuff, but they were trying to find those drugs long before they were successful in doing so. So now it does give the prognosis a higher level of an increased level of you being able to survive it instead of you dying from it. It's a fatal prognosis and you're just going to die. It's no longer like that. A lot of times, even with cancer, it's not like that because as we learn more and we explore more, and people are willing to allow doctors to give them the diagnosis and to explore ways to cure it instead of rejecting it and saying you're praying in a way or you're ignoring it, you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to tell anybody about it. We're starting to be able to use with the permission. It has to be permission because otherwise it's unethical and we can't do it. So, in order for researchers to find these things, yeah, you do have to trust the researcher that's giving you this information and trying to help you. And a lot of times, that's what we're saying, especially during the pandemic. We have made that very clear. Researchers and doctors and eh, these people are scientists. They're not being trusted to help you because their long history of not being helpful. So yeah, that's a hurdle to get over. Um, but it's about your testimony of making it through because your faith, and everybody's faith level is different, and it's being noted more in science. Is but again, it's not intended for you to reject everything all the time because you're like, oh well, the Bible said you only accept the things that you want and you reject the things that you don't, and all these other faiths that believe in God, they say you're only supposed to accept the things that you want to receive and reject the things that you don't. I don't think that's what it was saying because a lot of miracles happen because we acknowledge these things. So consider it an acknowledgement. Okay. So there's a need for testimonials for researchers to see how to track these testimonies of various true statistics. So when people are given a diagnosis, the prognosis, the severity of the diagnosis is more realistic because those who are blessed to live with or overcome the diagnosis or prognosis it lowers the potential for someone later who is diagnosed with it to say, "Oh man, that's fatal," you know. 10 out of 10 times you're going to die from whatever that is that they said you have. But that's because they don't have true statistics. They only have the statistics of the people who they were ethically able um, to study, if that makes more sense. If you don't give them permission to study you, they cannot tell your testimony for you. So you have to do that. So if you're given a diagnosis of an ailment and you don't want to accept it, and you want to have faith that you're going to survive it, you're going to be better than the last person that was diagnosed with it, that's great. But also give permission that that will help improve the statistics of survival rate. So the next person that's diagnosed with it doesn't have to figure denial is the best method for dealing with the bad news that they'd rather reject. We can't, um, you know, we can't do that with denial, with a reluctance to tell people or testify that you have that you know defied odds. We can't just tell your testimony. You have to tell it, or your family member. A lot of times people's family members, they have a family member who may have died from AIDS, and they don't want to tell anybody that they had lived with AIDS for 20 years and nobody knew. And a lot of it, that was during a time where living with it, when you got diagnosed with AIDS, it was a death sentence. But sometimes people they they were living with an ailment that was a sudden death type of diagnosis. But when they came to find and review the record, they saw that this person had AIDS for 20 years and they lived. Oh my God, let's put this in the statistics. Let's start now looking at people's medical records and seeing at their death. Let's see how long they were diagnosed with this ailment, and let's calculate how many years from the diagnosis originally and the time of death. And then that helps to improve the statistics. But it will be more productive if we were to find a way where we can tell people who receive diagnosis that they do not like and they would like to reject and that's unheard of. It would be more productive if we would tell them, look, we need to see this in order for other people to know that you can defy the odds, or your family can tell them that you defied the odds. When you're blessed, scream, hey, doom and gloom is not automatic just because you get bad news. And I understand that's a hard testimony to have, because I was in the NICU with two of my four. And I didn't know why I was there. Sometimes we go through things and it's not because of ourselves or something we did wrong, or oh, you weren't you questioned whether there was a God or not. You wanted God to show you if he really existed. So now instead of you having been a believer from birth, now you go and go through these things. It's like, I don't think that's what God's saying, because I think God wants to prove himself to everybody who believes, who truly believes, and not just by word of mouth. You can't just believe because your mama told you to. That's like being a Democrat because your mama told you to. Everybody in your family's a Democrat. Now, I'm not saying that that's the wrong move to make. What I'm saying is we really have to make that decision, and that decision has to be in our heart, because that's where we're judged, is in our heart. God judges us by our heart. Man judges us by our action. So we can't just always say, oh, well, I'm going to do this because my mama told me. I'm going to do this because my daddy told me. My grandma raised me like this. Y'all got to stop with that. Y'all got to stop with that, because that's not where it is. And as technology continues to advance, we're helping to make those improvements, but we don't need to wait until somebody's dead. That's why what my auntie say, change is slow to come. Change is slow to come because they have to find ethical ways to, produce these things and to bring into fruition the things that you would like to, live in, dwell in, enjoy. So we got to stop rejecting to the point of denial instead, because that diminishes your testimony. And I don't think that that's what God intended. God wants people to know that he is a miracle worker. If you deny that you ever even had the ailment, where's the miracle worker, right? So you can't keep denying bad news. um, you can, uh, it's a different way to go about it. And what you would say is, um, I can do all things, right? So how can you do all things if you're denying that this is one of the things you're doing, despite the fact that you have this ailment that you denied that you have? So we can't do that because God don't get the glory from that. Only person that gets the glory from that is man. And a lot of times they don't realize where the acclaim should have been given, who should have been the one to get the credit. So we have to start um, telling our testimony. Okay, that's what I'm saying. We got to tell our testimony. A hospital study, for example, showed that a floor of patients with the same terrible illness, okay, on one side, on one side, the patients were people who had the same, everybody had the same ailment, but on one side of the floor were patients who had the faith in the I am, the creator, that there's a God somewhere. Let's say it that way. So that on the one side, they had people who believe there's a God somewhere. The other side, they had people who did not believe that there's a God anywhere. And everybody received this, they had the same problem. So half of the people on this side that believed in God, some of them got the placebo, which means they did not get the help that they might have benefited from, because they were studying what benefits what. So it's not to say they were trying to do anybody any harm. Let's clear that. And on this side, some people, on the non-believer side, some people received the help that they thought would be helpful, and others did not receive the help. That's the placebo. Now, they watched to study to see what would happen. And in the instance, they saw that the side of the non believers, no matter whether they received help or not, they did not survive at the same ratio as the people who believed, whether they received the placebo or whether they received the help. And that helped scientists to understand there is a scientific difference between it. And a lot of times the scientific difference is just a small fraction of a number. And it was helpful. And that small fraction of a number is just from the people that they watched. It doesn't mean that that's worldwide, is global, it's everybody. That's just from the few people that they were blessed to be able to study. Now, why is that helpful? It's helpful because people need to understand what drug works. And a lot of times the drugs that they are producing do not work. They're not helpful, but they think it might be. So they provide that help, and the others get a placebo because they don't know if that drug will work. So that's necessary in order for us to improve the potential for you to receive the help you're looking for. For example, if people say, well, they have a new drug on the market and I want to use that drug, they're just not letting me use that drug. It's not that they're not letting you use that drug, it's that they don't know if it works, or if it does, or if it's going to cause you more harm than good. So they have to have scientific evidence in order to prove it ethically that it will be beneficial for whomever has this ailment. So again, denying that we have problems is not helpful. It's actually more harmful because it lowers the statistics. So that means that the math wasn't mathing, and the math showed scientists faith in there's a God somewhere made the difference, which made scientists explore there is a God somewhere, and the impact that that has on people. It makes a difference. There's an aspect there that they can no longer just throw out as an anomaly. They have to add that into their studies, and the more studies they do try to look. That may not be their original intent to find that information out, but it is in the study somewhere. And that's what I find interesting about studies, is that it's not always in the abstract. A lot of people think, oh, I'll just read the abstract. It's not just in the abstract, especially in studying a phenomenon. But anyway, like how does that go uh, with faith? How does that impact people who are ill and people who are fatally ill? And how does it impact babies in the NICU or premature babies? You even see in studies talking about, the studies that's taking place, talking about how there's a God somewhere, or faith in God is impacted people in highly stressful jobs, especially during the pandemic. Prayer has been noted that to be more helpful to people who are diagnosed with these problems. Um, I can't even tell you. When it first started, I started looking, especially, what did you say, Eddie? Especially to avoid losses. Exactly. You will be held liable. And organizations, the way that works, you cannot um, say, oh yeah, this drug will work, or some people, they say, oh, you told my mom that this drug will work, and she tried your drug and it didn't, and now I'm going to sue you for everything you worth. It's a process, and it's very sad that it's a slow process, but um, this is how you speed up that process. You want to expedite things as much as possible, especially if you or your loved one is the one that's experiencing these problems, and everybody's, murmuring under their breath every time you tell them you have an ailment or something's wrong with you. Everybody wants to mumble, oh, you said something was wrong with you, but it's so convenient. Let's stop doing that. That's what I'm saying. It used to be taboo to talk about your faith in public places, outside, the various types of houses of God, like mosque, or churches, or wherever, your synagogue or whatever it is. Now, why did I say that various houses of God? That's why, because people have different places that they go to worship God, worship the Creator, worship Allah, or whatever way you want to call God. He know who you talking to, even if nobody else knows. Some people in the church, I've seen some people say, oh, God is my father. That's my daddy. I call her, talk to him like he my daddy, because my daddy, he walked out or whatever. I talk to God. That's my mother. I lost my mother, and I talk to God. That's my mother. Look, God know who you talking to and who you talking about. He's not worried about what name you call him. He see your heart, and he's listening from there. Okay. So I look at it like this, if you were rich, how many houses would you have? You'd have one everywhere you went, because everywhere you go, you want to feel at home, and you'd have enough money to make that your home. No matter how, the food is different than the food you're accustomed to at one house, or the music is different from the music that you're accustomed to in one house, or how the conversation changes, the type of entertainment is different or better, or whatever you want to call it. But because you're rich, you can go anywhere you want, and you can call that home. So it's not necessarily to say one house is right and the other one is wrong. As long as you're allowed to dwell in that house, it could be a tent, it could be a yurt. It was A yurt is just a fancy house that's really just a huge circus type tent that has luxury household amenities in there. I've seen some yurts that are just amazing, and it really makes you rethink the whole outside living thing, mainly because you're not really living outside if you have all those amenities. But anyway, depending on your location, the house is right for you. Your tent, or sometimes you just in the mood for whatever, and that's what makes it right. So there's many houses and many paths that lead to the same creator. So a lot of people get hung up on words, and how you said this, and oh, you this that. I don't get hung up on whether people say that they are an atheist, or whether they say they're Muslim, or whatever they may say, because everybody has a path, and that path leads them to the creator. What no matter what they tell you, it always leads back to the creator. God knows how to get the attention of the beings he creates. So it's not to say that, oh, you, because you profess that you are an atheist, that you will not find God, because that's not the way God works. I have so many atheist friends who converted from being an atheist to being some sort of believer, but they did not adopt the orthodox manner in which people classify faith. So they call themselves people of faith, okay, or different terms or whatever, because a lot of times the various orthodox faiths have some, um, associated with some bad things. And a lot of people don't want to be classified with those bad uh, um, traditions or beliefs or practice or whatever it is they're doing that people don't want to be a part of. Some people are Jehovah's Witness, and a lot of people say they don't want to run into no Jehovah's Witness because they don't want to be bothered. And some people at one point they didn't want to be bothered with Christians because Christians would be throwing the Bible at you and talking about Jesus saves, and it's a lot of different things that Orthodox faiths that people say they don't want to be associated with because it has some sort of bad stigma, that people are like, well, I don't want to be stereotyped as that. So I'm not going to say that I'm stereotyped because that stereotype will follow me. So it just depends on what's right for you in the location that you're in, that you would display whether you are in agreement with um, that particular thing. So it's not to say you have to keep a label. We all vote. We all vote. We're all voters, whether you, exercise your ability to vote all the time or not. It's a matter of what you're in the mood for. Oh, well, I don't like who's running, so I'm not voting. Okay. It's not to say that you're not a voter, and you don't want to get classified and have these stigmas, the stereotypes to be, a part of your identity. So you'll say, "Oh, I'm not a Democrat, or I'm not a Republican," and we've seen that so many times now with what's going on, politically, that it's just crazy. So people, they're not trying to deny what they are. They're trying to let you understand that they don't fit the stereotype, and that's what everybody in the African American community has been saying for a long time. They're like, you have this idea of a stereotype. I don't fit that stereotype. And then you have multicultural friends or associates, and they come to you and they say things like, I remember I had an Indian roommate in college, and she was like, "Oh, I thought African Americans this and that." And then I told her I thought Indians this and that. So now we both know something different and something that's true, as opposed to the stereotypes that we were indoctrinated in, conditioned to believe, or conditioned to feel or think or respond to. And those things we saw them in television. And a lot of times I've told you in different episodes that television and entertainment was just one method to condition people. The idiot tube, the evolution of the television. They used to call it the idiot tube, and it started to show us that the television can be used to indoctrinate or condition people to do or be certain things. And we're starting to see that more and more, especially as time goes on and different methods are made more readily accessible, so that researchers can access that information in a more ethical environment, because it's a liability, and people don't want to be sued, so they try very hard. And then it's like, if you say that you retrieve this information ethically, you still have to prove that. And if they prove that you did not, you could lose a lot. So it's a tricky thing there. So that's why I'm always imploring you to, you know, allow these studies to take place and participate and tell your testimony, because we are definitely using your YouTube and social media testimonials. Okay. Yeah, they called it the idiot tube, but they use it on. Yeah, Eddie's right, and that's one method. A lot of people were rejecting television a long time ago, if you can imagine that. They didn't want that television in their house. They didn't want radio. They didn't want telephones. It's just that that's going a different route than where we're trying to go. We're trying to go focus on um the what we're doing. So I'm just gonna get back. I digressed a bit, but I veered off the topic a bit. Okay, but it just depends on your location, your mood, what house you're going to be in. So don't knock people for, saying whatever they say about their faith. Let them have their faith. God gives us all free will, and you cannot take that away because God won't let you take it away. You can make people say whatever they're going to say, but it's in their heart. And there's no way, and there'll never be a way where man will ever be able to judge or weigh a man's heart. It just does. It's just not going to happen anyway. So don't talk about why people's um they different houses of God. I'll just put it that way. I think of it like this. You know, I bore easily. Um, you may not realize when I'm bored because I'm mentally multitasking all the time anyway. So it's just normal for me. I don't require people to entertain me. I'm a whole mess by myself, okay? I'm a riot. So it's always a comedy show going on in my head. So that's that's just me. Um, but it's like you know how you do your hair, but some people do their own hair. And sometimes you'll, let somebody talk you into going somewhere, get your hair done just to pamper yourself or what have you. And some guys even they cut their own hair. And, they're like, well, I could do it myself or whatever. And then you let somebody talk you into going and getting it done. And you're like, oh, um, man, I'd be happier if I'd have did it myself. Or some people would say, oh, this was great. Um, I should do this more often. It depends on your mood. It has little to do with what was true or not. It's a matter of your mood and sovereignty. Sovereignty works. I suppose it moves because if God didn't want you to have different houses of faith, they wouldn't exist. It just plainly wouldn't exist. So it's not to judge, the various houses. It's to accept it, the part of it that you would like and reject the part that you do not. Not to reject it in whole. That's that's too judgy. That's cancel culture is real though. Uh, you may be happy with the outcome, but at the same time, it's something about it that you don't like, various aspects about it that you're like, oh, you're gonna nitpick this and that out of it because you're in a bad mood. But if you're in a good mood, you'll be like, well, I revisited it and I think it's all right. I think it's all right. Again, it had nothing to do with whether it was right or wrong. It was really based on the mood that you were in. So um I suppose it just comes down to your mood. It's not so much that it was right or wrong or whatever. It was about, your mood. Your mood does change your perspective. So, as many paths or choices that lead us to places we want to be. And based on your mood, you want to be here or you want to be there. So I don't think that, God works in a way that he says, I'm only going to go to churches and I'm only going to go to apostolic churches. I'm only going to go to Pentecostal churches. That's what man does. Okay. That's what man does. And it's not to say that I'm only going to acknowledge, ailments that are popularly talked about. And I know a lot about it, so I can believe that this is your problem when you say this is your problem. No, if someone tells you they have an ailment, what I do, when people say that they have an ailment or something, it's not something I'm familiar with, um, I'll go and look it up. I'll go and do a lot of research on it so that I can know because I want to be on one accord with whomever it is that has the problem, especially if I'm the one that's, talking to them or if I'm the one that's loving on this person. And I'll have this person in my circle, whether it's my social circle or a personal close knit circle. So I would suggest, especially a lot of times people don't want to talk about it, so you have to really look at it for yourself. You have to research it for yourself. But I wouldn't say, or how about, I would like for more people to stop saying that a person doesn't have an ailment that they have just because you're not aware of the intricacies of what that problem is. And Like, for example, somebody said, uh, everybody has narcissism. Everybody has narcissism. And that's because a lot of people were exhibiting the characteristics that shows you that, a lot of people have narcissistic tendencies, but it doesn't mean that you are diagnosed with narcissism. A lot of people, especially nowadays, they're exhibiting more and more signs of PTSD. So that's going to be a hot topic more often than not. And a lot of triggers are going to be different. Loud noises, in generally speaking, in general. People loud noises trigger them, and if this particular group of people develop PTSD and it was associated with loud noises, they're going to have a trigger that has loud noises. Or if a lot of people say, black people have PTSD just because of the things that they go through, and a lot of things that African American people endure, they have PTSD, and it's a trigger. For example, people say, why can you say the hard R and I can't say the hard R? Because it is a trigger. It's a trigger if someone outside of the African American community, um, or African, wherever you are in the world, if you have brown or black skin that's classified as black, um, people, if there's is association that's going to trigger them, that's going to say those are fighting words, because you are not representing that community, you're not from that community in any fashion. You cannot use that hard R, because that's a trigger that says it's fighting words, and I'm going to defend myself, because that is a racial attack. And then there's other, phrases and key phrases that's associated with that, and that's no fault of that community, that the victim community, or should I say the community that's victimized by that trigger. It's not their fault that you decided that you would try to speak over their head and say some things that triggered them, and you thought they didn't know that you intended to trigger them, because you thought you were slicker than what they don't. African Americans are so funny. They don't tell you everything, and they shouldn't tell you everything, but they are very intelligent. They know when you're slighting them. They know when you're saying something that's a slur. They know what you're doing. And a lot of times, I'm gonna put it this way. How do you think they know? I'm gonna tell you, a lot of times in various faiths, you can understand things a little better when you start to study faith, because it's a thing. It's a common theme among all the faiths that allow those who study it to understand. You are watching for the spirit that people move in. You get that? I'm going to say it again. You are watching for the spirit in which people move in. And that is how you know who it is you're dealing with. So a lot of African Americans, a lot of African people, period, African descendants of any place and in any location, they are understanding that in order for them to survive in any location they are in or going to, they have to understand the spirit in which you are trying to communicate in. And that is what they're picking up. They're not picking up your smile. They don't care about your smile. They don't care about how nice your words sound and woo woo woo, how you wooing them and trying to wine and dine them or whatever it is, bribe them, give them money. They understand. They see you. That's where we coined the phrase, I see you. Yeah, because people need to know, yeah, I see you. But just because I see you ignorant, that doesn't mean I have to respond to ignorance with ignorance. Just because I see you hateful, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, I do, it does matter. It does matter to a lot of people. Actually, it matters to a lot of people, but it doesn't always mean you have to respond in the manner in which you're trying to trigger them to respond. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, it matters, and it's definitely going to make a difference as you go on later. But God decides when He's going to intervene, and when He intervenes, there is no turning back. It's a final decision. So it's not to say um, that because you're a non-believer or you're an atheist or whatever, that these things aren't truths. The truth is true no matter who tells you, no matter how you learn the truth. And in each faith or even non-faith, it's always said that there'll never be anyone who doesn't know. So whether you choose to believe or choose not to believe or choose to exercise this faith in this particular way or whatever your choices are, you have free will. That's so what I'm saying is when I say you have free will is that's why it's okay. So when I say that's okay, I mean you got free will. It's okay. You know, if it wasn't okay, God wouldn't allow you to have free will. But He gave us free will. So nobody can take that from you. So that's got to be okay. So it's it's funny how people say, oh, well, you know, I used to think this way and now I think that way. It's because you allowed yourself to be open to what you were coming to understand instead of staying stuck on what you understood. And that's a big difference. It's a difference between what you understood and what you understand because you understood this. And as you keep moving, you're going to understand this. So you're traveling from one place to another. And that's what we're all supposed to do because as long as we're living, we're learning because we're traveling through life learning. And that's what we're supposed to do. And don't stay stuck in the moment. Don't think such despair in the moment because as you keep on working towards it, if you get a fatal prognosis or you get a terrible, you have a bad day, you're having a bad week, you're having a bad month, you're having a bad year, it doesn't matter. Keep going. You'll live through it as long as you can believe that you will. And that's what I said in one of the videos, in one of the episodes. I said there's a way that our brain works, and we're still studying the human brain. So we're still finding out a whole lot about the human brain. And as we're learning, we're like, oh, well, there's some things about the human brain that we didn't know, and we're finding out. And it's fascinating. We need to do more research on this, but the funds dry up. So we can't explore it unless we can validate the exploration. And a lot of times it's very difficult to validate the exploration of these studies because, again, you have to have participation, and a certain number of participants have to participate and find that it's a worthwhile investment. So that's where your testimonials come in handy because a lot of times the researchers are only able to go by the information that was put out there already instead of doing a live study. They have to go around about a different way. So I want to continue to encourage you to keep going and tell your testimony on whatever social media. Talk about it. Go to these companies. I don't care if it's been 5 years since you left the company. Go back and tell them, comment, say some things on their forums, in their emails, flood them with the information so that they can improve because a lot of times they don't know. And let me say why they don't know. They compartmentalize. So the retail section, they'll never hear in the executive level what the retail customers said because you never made it. Your voice never made it to the executive level. So without this, that's why I love this social media network because now there's more than one way that you can put it out there and you can let them know on the street of Tower and 56, there's this really high end store that was built there in 2016 and it's been there since and it's been struggling because I go in there and all the supposed help they're sitting there smoking. They'll tell you they on a break. They'll tell you they don't work here because they're off. And that's how companies began to know, oh, that's what happened. Because you have to put it out there in a way that doesn't come back to bite you in the butt. So if you say, oh, yeah, I tried to put the word out there that they ratchet, but it came back to bite me in the butt. There was one time I complained about this McDonald's at this location. These people were mad. They were mad at me. But they were fundraising all the time at this particular location, and they were always hiring young kids, but it didn't seem like they were training the kids. And but they were pressing the kids and stressing the kids to, it's a fast food restaurant. You gotta hurry up and push it out. You gotta do this. And yelling at these little young kids, high school students. And the kids were making, minor mistakes that seemed like, suspect. And I'm not eating or drinking anything look suspect. Give my money back. You keep it. I'm going somewhere else. I don't want McDonald's today. So this particular location, I went on the website. I complained, and they I guess they use that as an example because somebody years later sent the reply, and I just so happened to get the information that they had sent the reply, and in that reply, that that person was like, "Calm down." Um, I was like, you calm down. This old. This comment is super old. You calm down. You catch up." So anyway, um, it was funny because it shows that people do go back and read your testimonials. People are going back to those particular forums and of this company where customers or patrons have left comments, or even people who invested in the company has left comments, and they try to rework it to improve. It's a difference between performance and improved performance. People say things and it's like, ooh, I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand why you don't understand. So you have to be more clear about why you don't understand. So improved performance means that you're progressively getting better, better and better and better all the time. Performance is, oh, you're putting on the same show all the time. You're putting on the same show all the time. It's going to get you to stay, but it's not going to get you to grow. So there's a difference. I'm a lot of old school, I'm a lot of new school, and I'm a lot of the school that I'm going into. How about that? So I take a little bit from every pile and I make what an assessment. I make a statement or observation call. And from that, it's I just find it funny because a lot of people they so narrow minded and they're so focused on one thing they can't see the bigger picture. And it's a lot of times it's because you're conditioned to only see what you want to see as it pertains to you and the community that you're trying to communicate with or stay with. But the funny thing is, it's ironic that that same community is like, oh, we got to get some fresh meat in here. We got to get some fresh meat because y'all so stale. And you're so still because you're trying to get along by allowing yourself to stay, narrow minded so you can stay in that group in that community, and then that same community say, oh, okay, you're too old, it's too old, let's get some fresh people in here, some new minds, some new thinking, some diversity. And that very thing is the reason why you're no longer relevant. But sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles. You got to be yourself. Don't let anybody tell you not to be yourself. Don't let anybody try to convince you of why yourself isn't good enough and what you're doing isn't good enough and why what you're saying and doing is because it's so rarely spoken of isn't whatever you say that it is. So be encouraged to tell it. Go tell it. I don't know how long ago that review was sent, and I was mad, I was hot because I was hungry, and now I got to get my money back and go somewhere else because I am definitely not eating that. So it does kind of change your perspective as to that particular restaurant quality of food. So even though it may not be the case at a different location where the people in there are better trained. It has nothing to do with their age, but the training, as long as you have the ability, they should have the ability, and they should example what your teachings of that ability is. And if they do not, then you didn't do your job, and you may need to be replaced. So it's not always about the kids don't know how to do their job. That's not always the case. The case might be that maybe the manager was busy and they had other things that they had to do and they couldn't train the person properly. Or maybe that person was like, oh, this kid already told me that they just doing this after school until they get enough money to go to prom. Whatever your reason is, it's a matter of the fact that the organization has um, steps that you have to take. And everybody, regardless of where you fall in that category, as you continue to go and patronize the company, wherever you fall in that category, you have to follow the process. And a lot of the times, help is slow to come because we don't understand the process. And the reason why I hate saying the system is because it's not necessarily the system, it's the process. All right. That's my time for today. So I really do have to go. I don't see, very much banter back and forth in the comments. So I'm going to just assume or gather that you guys have all the information that you need and there's nothing more that needs to be said. So hopefully this gap filler episode was helpful to some of the other episodes that you watched so as you could see more cohesion, so you can understand how this connects to one thing or the other and why in the very first video I said what I said and why the other videos thereafter leads to this one. So I want to make sure I had that gap filler episode. I think you Yeah, I think so too. And a lot of times the process is the problem because people don't complain, sis. They don't complain. And they just forget about it and they reject it and say, oh, well, I'm just not going to go back there again. But then they find themselves back there and they say, they validate that decision. We have to get it out there. And, we used to make fun of people and now we call such a thing saying, "Oh, well, I'm going to write a letter." Yes, write a letter. Write that letter. Write and keep writing. Flood them with it. What'd you say? It may not be fit for everyone, but you know how we do, sis. We make it fit. You know what I'm saying? We do what it do. We take a little bit of nothing and we make a whole lot of something out of it to the point where it's popular. They rebrand it and they sell it for a whole lot of money. And we be like, why didn't we think of that? You did. But somebody took it. It's not funny. It's just ironic that we never really go deep down that. Okay, I gotta go because that's gonna lead to a whole nother thing. So that's what I in one episode I said, protect your intellectual property. And that's how you do it. Because we do think of these things. Exactly, sis. We think of these things, but we don't know how to brand it. We don't know who to tell. But if you keeping your idea, if you putting your idea out there and it's trackable back to you, you will get the credit for it. And you got to watch for those videos because I did say that in some other videos and I told you how. But since this has already been an hour long, we're going to have to go. I appreciate you chiming in, sis. You have a good day. And happy 4th of July or happy Juneteenth or whatever you're going to celebrate on your time off. Okay.